Things were looking up. Not only had I just received my master's in journalism, one of the region's best brains had chosen to mentor me. I was ready for the good things in life. At work, I eventually got posted to the environment desk. As I traveled, I began to notice that the weather pattern was changing. Too hot and dry, or too rainy and flooded. But my monthly highlight was the meetings with the professor who was mentoring me. Prof, as I would call him, would buy lunch and I would bring my articles. Then we'd analyze what was happening in the region. His sharp mind turned me into a believer in markets, in their efficiency, their dynamism, and their ability to transform societies. Prof and I were to write a book in 2050. It was supposed to be the story of how Eastern Africa became the economic powerhouse of the continent. But the story didn't turn out exactly the way we thought it would. Even as I worked on environmental stories, energy remained the biggest buzz, with new technologies, new ideas, new money, and its stories came at us with every extreme weather event or episode of volatile energy prices. I loved discussing these stories at our monthly lunches. Prof was deeply invested in finding coherent energy plans, but our leaders didn't seem interested in creating any policies. That disinterest proved disastrous with the 2025 financial crash. The rich nations were the first to go down, but we were all living on borrowed money. We looked to our leaders for guidance, but most quietly served their terms, or simply resigned and dodged accountability. My stories about the environment were increasingly dominated by climate change, as it became a frightening reality everywhere. That forced people to give the Paris Climate Agreement stronger legal force and accelerated a shift to low-carbon energy systems. Exceptional turmoil brought more security forces into our region, which destabilized global oil prices, speeding up the shift to electric vehicles in the rich world. It was an exciting time to be a journalist, but a scary time to be a citizen of this region. We were just waiting, wondering, drifting. Before the crash, prospectors had been looking in Africa for minerals needed by clean energy technologies. They had quietly staked their claims, but now the invasions began. The first invasion was the clean energy and natural gas companies, ready to exploit their mineral rights or find new ones. You see, huge loans initially taken by our governments to fund fossil projects that are now obsolete had to be paid up. The easiest way out was for our governments to accept huge payouts offered by rich nations. But there was a catch to their offer. The rich nations in return took our minerals and rare earth metals for their own renewable technology investments. Well, it seemed like mere barter exchange, but on face value, we were the biggest losers. The second invasion was agricultural lands. Prof and I considered land a commodity like everything else. If the foreigners will pay for it, let them do so, or so we thought. I wrote the stories of tycoons and corporations paying our governments large sums to develop fertile land in remote areas of our countries. But sooner or later, our farmers were forced to sell out or move, unable to compete with these commercial farms. The third invasion was companies exploiting the new carbon markets. Creative local investors in Eastern Africa had found new ways to use the global carbon markets to reward our people who restored degraded lands or protected healthy habitats. Eventually, our local companies were taken over by the international traders. The results? Financial profits went to foreigners who focused on the climate emergency and dismissed local needs and cultural traditions. I saw my people lose control of their forests and land. The fourth invasion was exporting electrical power. Our development plans called for more manufacturing, but there was little industry in the region. As a result, the large-scale power projects in hydro, gas, solar and wind, built in the 2020s, were now producing more electricity than Eastern Africans could consume or afford. But there is a ready market for clean power in North Africa and Europe. The power companies of our region connected their excess power to the European grid using ultra-high voltage lines provided by China. As our power went north, everyone on the deal earned valuable clean energy credits that could be sold for profit or used to meet the Paris Agreement's targets. Prof was delighted to see the EAPP back in business. But it wasn't due to any great regional corporation. Instead, this was market-driven by companies in Europe and North Africa buying Eastern Africa's power. So much electricity left the region that local people were still unable to have the light and power they needed. Only major African businesses and wealthy households could afford it. Local people objected, but government leaders just saw good deals, new incomes, reduced deficits, and a more comfortable life for themselves. Any downside was just the price of development.